register, vote. Register, register, vote.
Thank you very, very much. I believe now I will be turning it over to Kiana.
Good morning. Thank you, Ann, so much. Register, register, vote. Well, good morning, South Shore.
Good morning.
Good morning, and thank you all so much for coming out today. What is in it for South Shore? That is the question that we are posing today and should be asking every day and in every conversation, because we are community stakeholders that are vested in our community. So we are here today to hear from the candidates that will be on the ballot, just so that we are all clear, and I know we've got an informed body of people. Early voting has already started, and so I think it's very important as we talk about the register, vote, that we keep that in mind. Early voting has started, and so right now early voting is downtown at the super site on 175 West Washington. It will be moving into the 50 wards. Anybody know our early voting site in the 7th Ward? Yeah, 100. That's Jeffrey Manor Library. Very good.
Yes,
so again, if by chance you feel that you may not be able to make it out on election day, you have the ability to register online and in person, but to vote. So we just want to make sure that you all are aware of that. But we've got two very distinguished gentlemen that are standing here to my left, and I know that we want to make sure that we have an opportunity to hear from them, get to know them and their platform and their vision for our community. So without further ado, I'm going to give just a very quick intro of each of them. Our first candidate is Jedidiah Brown. He is a long-term resident of South Shore, a strong community activist and voice for justice and change in our community. Let's give it up for Jedidiah Brown. Our next candidate is Charles Kyle, equally a very vested and long-term resident of South Shore, very active in a range of community organizations, passionate about equality and justice for our community and creating access for all residents. Let's give it up for Charles Kyle. So we're in a house of God, and we're going to definitely make sure that we do this decently and in order. And so you should have received a handout when you walked in that has the format for today, but I'll just walk us through it very quickly just so that you understand how we're going to facilitate the conversation. Again, we're doing this in a very just manner. God. Very good. Thank you so much. Quick housekeeping note, restrooms. The ladies' room is right down the stairs here, and the men's room is right up the stairs, so if you need to visit any of those areas, feel free. Our format, we will have opening from each candidate, which will be 2 minutes. From there, we will take the same question that will be generated from a public policy issue. Each candidate will be asked the same question and afforded 2 minutes to respond. The following candidate will have a 1-minute rebuttal to that response. From there, we will open the floor up for questions from our audience members. I believe that each of you should have received a ticket when you walked in. If by chance you didn't, please raise your hand and we'll make sure you get one. We're going to do this in a democratic way and make sure that we hear from as many of you as we possibly can, but time, of course, we have to be mindful of. And please make sure that you are posing a question, because we really want to make sure that our candidates have an opportunity to speak to those issues. So if you do have a question, please formulate that. You might want to write it down so that when it is your turn, you'll be ready to speak to your question in a very succinct way. From there, we will have a 1-minute closing from our candidates, and then we'll just have some last-minute announcements from our host. So once again, we want to make sure that we afford this time to our candidates to respond to the issues. We ask that you would hold your applause. I know I won't even talk about booing, because I know this is a highly educated and respectful crowd, so I know that we know better than that. And we want to set an example for our young people that are here with us as well. So without further ado, we're going to get started with our first question. Thank you, gentlemen. And again, just another footnote. An invitation was extended to Alderman Greg Mitchell. I believe, as Pastor Anquet said, there was a scheduling conflict, so he could not join us today. But again, there was an invitation extended to all three candidates that will appear on the ballot in February. Our first question, and this is pertaining to leadership in general. As you can see from the diverse audience of stakeholders and residents that are here today, South Shore boasts of a very robust community organizing and community group population. Can you speak to us as to how your vision and your leadership style will work in concert with existing community organizations and to create like leadership and open access? We'll start with Charles, and then we'll move to Jedidiah, and the next question will go in the opposite direction.
Good morning. So I'm big on independence and transparency. I've been involved in a lot of organizations in the ward, in South Shore in particular. And the way in which you make sure that the community and the Alderman's office is working together is by the Alderman's office empowering community organizations. I was a part of the Planning Coalition. I worked with ASE. I've worked with multiple organizations in the ward. And what I noticed was that those organizations weren't necessarily empowered or given the resources they needed to be super successful in the ward. So in terms of what I would do, I would just make sure I'm giving organizations the resources that they need, access to my staff and myself, and making sure that at the end of the day, organizations know that they can come to me as an alderman, and I'll make sure that we're all working in concert together to make sure we have everything for the ward. Thank you.
Greetings, everybody. I have, over the last decade, had the pleasure of identifying the greatest resource of any government, and that is its residents, its constituency. And just like Charles, I've partnered with so many organizations throughout the years, and there's a common issue for South and West Side organizations that look to do good in the city of Chicago. That is the fact that they're under-resourced and poorly represented by our government. And the partnership is just not there. And so just kind of building upon what he said, Ford Motor Company came before the Ford Foundation. In order for you to be effective in dealing with philanthropic and humanitarian efforts, you have to be able to have the resources to do so. And for me, I believe in self-sustainability. And so with that, I commit as an alderman, recognizing that the most central part and responsibility of being an alderman is to identify resources and to partner with those community organizations, making sure that they can reach those deliverable outcomes. And for us, I believe that there needs to be a lot of training around small business ownership, and we need to be creating a new generation of entrepreneurs who then can self-fund their projects to do community work. And the reason why that is an issue is because a lot of people try to get 501c3s, but the issue is that when you have so many people getting 501c3s and they're fighting over a very minuscule amount of resources from government grants, then you see that there's a lot of competition and there's no community, and we have to break it up by making sure that we use grants to fund collaboration. But I like what she said. There's a very diverse group of people who make up this community, and that actually is an opportunity. It creates an opportunity for us to become interested in learning about each other and our different plights of life. And I want to host regular meetings like this as an alderman that are working groups, that is not just to come and talk about what's going on in City Hall, but we need to create an identity for our community, and we need to figure out who we all are, and we need to come together and craft a plan and have working groups that make the delivery.
Thank you so
I'm
much.
gonna use all my time.
So one thing that I omitted is our timekeepers in the back, and they're holding up the time cards to let our candidates know how much time they have. And I need y'all to keep me honest. I bifurcated the agenda. We were supposed to start with an opening statement. So y'all gotta hold me to the fire now if I'm not doing this the right way. So we're gonna thank you, gentlemen, for the statement about partnership in the ward. We actually now want to allow you 1 minute to provide an opening statement, and we'll start with Mr. Brown.
1 minute?
Yes, 1 minute.
Sorry. I 200,000 people have left the city of Chicago. And it has been heartbreaking for me because a lot of these issues that have caused people to want to leave, I've been an activist, frontline activist, trying to make sure that the marginalized have had a voice. And even myself, I've had some very high highs and some very low lows trying to fight for a better Chicago my entire life. I've given it to public service. And I was born and raised in a household that was full of faith. And when I look in our community now, I just see so many people with so much untapped potential that I realized that in all my life, from now being hired to be a college professor with some college, having had 3 organizations and 2 of them are national, and been able to be a consultant to every level of government, I recognize that the only reason why I became what I am today is because of the people who were behind me. And with that being said, I'm done. My time is up. Can we get a minute and 30 seconds?
My name is Charleskyle. So when you look at the 7th Ward, it's 4 different communities, 4 distinct different communities. And the reason I'm running is because over the past 10 to 12 years, when we look at our alderman, each alderman has had their set base. So we had an alderman for South Shore, and now we have an alderman for Jeffrey Manor. And I'm running to be the alderman for the 7th Ward. Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen. We're going to move on to the public policy issue of economic development. All of us here know that South Shore is a commodity-rich neighborhood, from our lakefront to our rich housing stock to our public transit and to our residents. We also recognize that there's been a great number of disinvestments that are taking place as we look at some of our business corridors and how economically depressed they are. But we hear larger conversations around striking developments, such as the Tiger Woods Golf Course and the Presidential Library Center. Can you talk to us about your vision to make sure that those large developments are representative of the South Shore community, while at the same time, how will you address making sure that there's economic vitalization for 71st, 75th, and 79th Street?
Okay, so I just want to say that on the record, when I work with ISAE, I was a part of the community benefits agreement. So the first community benefits agreement that ISAE had, I helped write that because I believe in community benefits agreements. And so when we're talking about a Tiger Woods golf course, or necessarily how is it going to impact the community and how are we going to benefit from it, we need the same thing. You know, so if we can't stop it from coming, we need to make sure that we have safeguards in place to protect the community, to protect the residents that already live here. We need to make sure that we have people who live in 60649 working at this golf course. We need to make sure we have young people who go to Hyde Park High School, young people who go to South Shore High School, being able to benefit from this golf course being here. In terms of our business corridors, the blighted business corridors, we just had a business open up on 71st, South Shore Road. And what they said was it took them 2 years after getting the Neighborhood Opportunity Fund grant to open. We need to peel back the red tape on businesses being able to open in the ward. We need more resources for communities, so business owners like them, to be able to come in and say, hey, this is what I want to do. Work with the Alderman, work with the South Shore Chamber, work with the Southeast Chamber, work with organizations within the ward so that they're able to get the resources they need, help build capacity, and make sure they're benefiting the community. Thank you.
I am a strong believer in community benefits agreements, as well as when we were fighting to get the trauma center on the south side of Chicago. Again, it all goes around organizing. And I've been saying this consistently. If downtown has a cold, our neighborhood has pneumonia. The issue is that when we want to control who comes and develop in our neighborhood, and we don't own the spaces that they're trying to negotiate in, we typically become bullied, or when we don't have elected representatives who properly organize and inform us of what is actually at stake, then people are kind of sort of not aware of what's happening to organize to make sure that there are community benefits agreements. And so I do plan as an alderman to make sure that anybody that wants to develop in the 7th Ward, that they must introduce themselves to the community, and there's going to be a precinct captain system of 46 individuals who are going to be independently selected by the community, that every developer that wants to come into our community will understand that we're looking for you to hire within the ward. We're looking for the people that's in the ward to actually own the spaces that you want to occupy and build in, and we want you to also make sure that you are, as we're developing one of the most skilled labor forces in the city. We want to make sure that since we are a little bit behind the 8 ball, that any opportunity that's coming to our area, that we're organizing the community to be visible, to be present, and to be active as we press to make sure that every single entity gives a community benefits agreement, and we vote in City Hall against developments on the north side of downtown that doesn't also extend to equity being on the south side of Chicago as well.
Thank you very much. Moving on to education, which we know is the passport to the future. Can you state your position on an elected school board and your position on charter schools for the 7th Ward?
I fully support an elected school board. I don't think there's any other way for us to address it. We need to also make sure that our public schools are fully funded, and I do think that Chicago should put a moratorium on new charter schools. One of the issues for our schools in our neighborhood is that we have quite a bit of those that are labeled as level 1. However, parent participation is low, and all of them are deemed, or pretty much 80% of them are deemed unsafe. And there are people who go from the southeast side of Chicago and they take their children all the way out west to go to school because they don't feel safe in the neighborhood school that's right down the street. And so my focus is to fight to get an elected school board, to make our neighborhoods safer. And one thing that aldermen get to do that we don't often hear is as elected officials, you get to lobby all the way up to the federal government to find funding resources to make sure that our schools are adequately funded, and as at every enrichment program and trade and things that we've lost in our school, I want residents to help create those programs so that we can actually teach our next generation of leaders with what CPS have lost the resources to create, like the trades and the after school programs, etc.
Community schools are the Epics of the community. You've never saw a really great school in a really bad community. When we talk about what people do, they move to areas to go to schools. They move to Lincoln Park. They move to Homewood Flossmoor. They move to these areas so that their children have a good education. So when we're talking about education, it's pivotal, particularly the neighborhood school. In terms of the elected school board, in my tribune question, I said that I'm on the record in full support of an elected school board. I also want to state the fact that for everyone that says they're in support of an elected school board, what we have to safeguard against is the charters and the unions putting their candidates in and funding a race. In Los Angeles County, $15 million was spent in the school board race. And so when you have that much money in a school board race, it's no longer really a democratic process. But so we want to make sure we have campaign finance reform behind the elected school board. But I do support the elected school board. And I also want to just talk about the fully funding of the neighborhood schools. I went to James Madison in BC. When I went to James Madison, we had multiple programs that were free for children to attend. And that's what helped keep me off the street. That's what helped keep me safe in my community. So we need to bring back those programs. We need to fully fund the schools, and we need to make sure kids have access to those programs. Thank you.
Thank you. We all recognize that the alderman is in essence the mayor of the ward. And that work should not just start when they are looking to be on the ballot. So can you talk to us about any initiative or strategy that you have around public safety and how to ensure that the South Shore community has the resources and the partnerships it needs to deal with the public safety concerns? We'll start with Charles.
So I met some of the people in this very room at my beat meet. So the first time I met them was at a community policing meet at a beat meet. When we talk about just public safety, I don't believe we need more officers on the street. I believe we need officers walking the beat. We need them on patrol, on the bike patrol, and we need them actually engaging with the community. When we talk about how do you improve the overall climate of a community, we have people who get PTSD when they see the police. When they see a police car, they're triggered with PTSD. But if the police is engaging with the community, if we have more funding for community police and more funding for the CAPS program, more funding for the events that they do in the 3rd and the 4th district, I believe we'll see the climate change in our community around policing, And we'll see people opening up and warming up to the police, and we'll see more people open to talking to the police, which in turn will deter and decrease crime. Thank you.
Public safety is a passion of mine. I currently am an advisor to the superintendent of Chicago Police, Eddie Johnson, as well as I help them with the rewriting of the level of force policy for the city. And I've been on the front lines. In our community alone, we've had 323 shootings, 1,207 robberies, 2,149 burglaries over the last 3 years since this administration. And what it speaks to is a quality of life issue. And public safety is actually very pivotal in getting the essential things we need in our community, because people always express not feeling safe coming over to our side of town. And so with that, policing in Chicago is been done completely wrong, and the communities have to have a very real conversation. Yes, there's PTSD, but I'm going to say something that might be shocking because you don't hear it said enough or often. But some of our police officers are also engaged in some criminal activity, especially in our community, and they're very harassing and disrespectful to the constituents in the neighborhood. And so with that being said, my commitment, or what I'm looking to do around public safety, is to make it that we bring back funding for the community watch programs, and that we actually, when we do have 800 police officers short in Chicago, we are short 300 detectives. That's why a lot of these crimes are not solved. We sit the rates of solving crimes in Chicago, the clearance rate is somewhere around 20 to 30%. And the only way that we're going to be able to resolve that is that we have to be able to actually, with the budget issue, 800 police officers short, I would like to create I've created a source by which we can actually employ residents to patrol some of their own communities, as well as we need to be finding more money to get the 300 detectives the funding, because this was what detectives do versus patrolmen. They're able to actually go into the community, develop the relationships, find out what the issues are, and
Thank you, gentlemen. I know it's a lot of thoughts to get out. We're going to make sure that we try to provide you as much of an opportunity to speak to your complete thoughts. As I look around the room, I can tell that this is a very engaged community, so I'm sure you have all phoned your aldermanic office at some point in time or called 311. And sometimes the response you've gotten has been favorable, sometimes maybe not so much. So gentlemen, can you talk to us about how you would plan to set your office up, your service ward office, to make sure that it's fielding calls from residents, and how you will use the 311 and other devices to make sure that constituency concerns are addressed appropriately?
So I'm big on technology, and I believe that, so when you call the ward office and you put in the service request number, on my official automatic page, I'm going to have a ticker that's going to show your service request number, and it's going to show when your service request has been completed. And then someone from my office is going to call you to make sure and ensure that the service request that you put in with the office has been completed. I think that that's one of the gaps that we have right now. When people call, but they don't get a service request number when they call 311, it's very important that you get the service request number so that you can hold myself or the current alderman accountable. And then after that, making sure that it's completed. And so what I would do is just make sure we have a live ticker on my automatic page that shows when your service request has been completed, and someone from my office is going to call to make sure that you're satisfied. We are looking for, well, first of all, the power of an alderman has really drastically shifted in Chicago. They don't really deal, a lot of the services and things are ran digitally from downtown now. We need aldermen that are going to organize again the community and hold these institutions and these places accountable. So three-pronged thing. I believe that we need to have a physical office in the middle of the ward, and we need to have more coordinated investment into our business district by creating a satellite office in different parts depending on what project we're focusing on. And then I've committed to a 72-hour visit from my office personally if you made a call for service and or call to the office by either myself or the staff. And on top of having on top of having you all be able to follow up with the service request, I would like to also make sure that you all know that I won't stop campaigning.
you see us coming and knocking on doors and visiting people. I plan on being a proactive alderman that's very much so in the community, visiting the residents, and sometimes before there's a call, I'm gonna just be coming around with our staff and making sure that the needs of our community is met.
Remember what these gentlemen are saying, write them down so we can hold them accountable. Our leadership has to be held accountable, and that is incumbent upon us. Well, before we shift into our last hour, I want to make sure you all are jotting down your questions because we're going to be opening up very soon, and we want to make sure that we can, again, include as many of those questions as possible. We also want to allow the candidates to pose a question to one another, so I want you to be giving some thought to that because we're going to do that very shortly as well. One of the things that Pastor Anque said at the onset of the program was the number of aldermen that we've had just in his pastoral leadership tenure. And I think we all know that continuity of leadership is very important, and it sets communities back when our aldermen are not able to hit the ground running. So knowing that you've spent a lot of time in the community as workers and as community organizers and activists, what would be the first piece of legislation that you would introduce as the alderman of the 7th Ward? Mr. Brown.
So the first thing that I would like to do is draft a memorandum of understanding with the city of Chicago against gentrification, bad gentrification and displacement policy. I do understand that we're living on a very valuable parcel of Chicago's land. There is an intentional design to move us out of our community now that benefits are starting to finally come to the south side of Chicago so that they can bring in the generation of techies and talent from across the country. They've kind of written us off, if you will. And so my first focus would be to draft a understanding with the city of Chicago that any policy that's going to have a negative impact from gentrification or displace the current residents here, that we actually, as a community, are working against it, as well as I believe that we should be looking to make sure that if a police officer is not servicing the community the proper way, right now, currently, only you're very limited on how they can move officers from a community, but I believe that if an officer is not servicing the community, the legislation needs to be put in place that allows a delegation of selected community representatives to move that police officer out of the district to serve a community that they may feel more better served.
The first ordinance I would draft would be ordinance to increase the funds for the neighborhood opportunity fund. So what I would do is I would draft the ordinance to make sure 20% of TIP funds are allocated to the neighborhood opportunity fund. So by doing that, we have more money for more businesses to open up in our corridors. When you look at our 75th corridor, it's blighted from Yates to the lake. When you look at our exchange corridor, 71st to 79th, it's completely blighted. So I will make sure we take the TIP money and using that money for what it's actually meant to do, which is build our business corridors, and I would do it by allocating that money for the neighborhood opportunity fund.
Thank you. Moving to housing. What protections, reforms, legislation, ordinances, and other initiatives can be leveraged to increase the opportunities for affordable housing development in our community? Mr. Collins.
So I've been saying this in every form. Mic check. So I've been saying this in every forum. We don't have an affordable housing problem in the ward. We have people who are swimming under their mortgages because they can't afford them after the mortgage bust. What we need to do is make sure people are maintaining the value in the homes that they have. A bungalow in South Shore is worth $250,000 at the high end. On the northwest side, it's worth $500,000. We need that same equity in our homes. And so when we talk about affordable housing, we can't just talk about affordable housing in terms of condos and new development. We have to talk about how the people who are here are able to stay here. And so what I would do is, first of all, I will say this, I'm on the record in support of rent caps. That's another starting, but that's not the issue that we have. The issue that we have is home equity, making sure people aren't swimming in debt because of the mortgages that they have, making sure that people are able to afford their homes, making sure people who live here are comfortable. And that's my answer. Thank you.
It is very, very much so a similar answer, but we call it low-income housing, as well as, you know, we already understand. Again, I'm looking at the root of this. A lot of the times, even a study's been released that have proven that they have intentionally undervalued our homes. They've assessed them to be lesser value than they are. And so, again, outside of what Charles has already said, it goes back to being able to organize our neighborhood and our community in a way that is going against some of the planned policies of gentrifying and redlining us out of our community. And so the thing that we're looking to do is rent control, as well as to create a new generation of homeowners by identifying trainings and grants from the federal and state government to help people become homeowners, especially those who are first-time buyers, so that we can have a less transient community and a more stable one, on top of what Mr. Collins already said.
Thank you. So how many of us have ever called the Alderman's office about new lights on our block, or we want a speed hump, or we need our street repaved? Just me? All right. So you do realize that that money comes out of a capital improvement budget called the menu that each alderman has jurisdiction over. Given the volume of requests that come into the automatic office, as our alderman, how would you create a just and transparent system for the allocation of the menu budget?
Participatory budgeting, and it's basically a process by which you allow the constituents to, how it's done in our particular ward, it will be done through that 46 precinct captain system, where they will be able to vote on coordinated projects that need to be taken care of in the ward. As well as the current administration has said that they've gotten $100 million more than the 5.2 that you're allocated in the 4 years that you're an alderman. I think that our problems are solved, and maybe you should run for president at this point, but we need people who are genuinely able to identify resources on the state and federal government level so that we can increase that budget, because it's not enough to meet the needs of the community. However, again, in bringing the community together in participatory budgeting with an independent precinct captain system, they'll be able to plan and to vote on and to coordinate how certain the infrastructure improvements come out in the community.
So I would use the same thing, participatory budgeting, but what I would do is different community organizations, different block clubs would basically submit a letter of inquiry. And so from those letter of inquiries, we would take the top 4, and then we would vote on them as a community. So we would vote them through robocalls, text messages, town halls. And so at the end of the day, a community, when we go to a community meeting, they can say, well, this is what this community chose to do. So participatory budgeting, making sure people are putting in a letter of inquiry from different community organizations or different block clubs, and then as a ward, in totality, we vote on it through robocalls, text messages, and town halls.
Thank you. So our first hour is history, and we want to prepare to transition into our next and last phase. I know that we've all been cooped up in the house the last couple of days, so I want you all to have an opportunity to get out and enjoy this sunny heat wave that we have on this Saturday. But I want to do one thing. I want to give you gentlemen an opportunity to formulate a question to present to one another. But I also want to give us an active exercise. How many of us have a Facebook or social media page? Don't be shy, because the majority of you all are my friends on Facebook. Okay, all right, yes. So you know how we do Facebook Live? We're always posting, you know, where we went to eat, what we did last night. It's engagements such as this that really help amplify the importance of voting, the importance of the South Shore community, because again, we all know the value and the assets that we have. The media doesn't always portray that, but we know all too well And so I want you to join me in this exercise and pull your phones out, and I want you to use the hashtag South Shore Votes. Let people know where you are right now, that you are taking time out of your day to become educated on candidates that are seeking your support, that you want to make sure that you're making an informed decision. And there's really an obligation that each one of us has. Ann talked about, the importance of us register, vote. But we've got to make sure that we're taking everybody in our household who is eligible to vote with us. The process now, they're trying to make it easier where you can actually register at the actual polling place and vote then. So they're removing those obstacles. So it's important that we take responsibility for who our next mayor is going to be, who our next state treasurer and clerk, as well as our alderman. It's very important that we work together. Right now we're reading time and time again about the corruption that's taking place on the 5th floor in the City Hall. So we really want to make sure that we're electing leaders with integrity that's going to be accountable to us. But we got to make noise. We got to let them know that we are here, that we are organized, and that we're going to hold their feet to the fire. So again, I'm going to be checking Facebook to make sure that the hashtag is being used and that you're promoting being here, you're promoting voting, letting people know that early voting has started, the importance of voting, where to go vote for 7th Warders. Where again? Where's our early voting site?
Jeffrey Manor.
You know that on election day you will have to vote in your home precinct, so you need to make sure you're aware of that. If you have moved, if you've changed your name, all of that information needs to be updated. And again, with technology, it's made much easier, but it's so important and so imperative that we exercise our right to vote. So I hope that gave you guys enough time to come up with a question, right? All right. Okay, we're going to start with Charles. You have a question for Jedidiah?
Our opponent has done a lot of things in the city. I can't take it away from him. He's been on the front line for everything. Trump, Plum, McDonald, justice in general. So are you going to be an alderman for the 7th Ward or alderman for Chicago?
I think that just like any other person's occupation, is often talked about as a skill set and not if they're going to be available. Everything that I've ever gotten involved in my life, I've been focused and I've been consistent and I've been effective. What I'm excited to do is that all over the years that I have been able to be an activist, my work here in Chicago has spread it across the nation, and every single resource that I've obtained, from celebrities to civics to business owners to regular people, I'm actually looking forward to focusing it in the 7th Ward and making sure that we can get, I believe that we're going to solve 60% of the issues within 4 years, because that's more than enough time for a quality of life shift, and I'm going to use every single thing that I've accumulated over those years to just simply deliver without excuses for our ward. I'll be very focused on our community. As well as I say this, I believe that the 7th Ward has to look at itself as a neighbor in a larger city, because we keep on talking about ward boundaries, but we are a part and neighbors of an entire city. And with that being said, some of the people that's in the 7th Ward, they won't even be in the 7th Ward after the remapping. I'm going to be an alderman that fights for Chicago to do right by all of his people from the 7th Ward. And when we go down to City Council, just like I've done in all the projects, we're going to go down there 53,000 people strong versus one. My question to you, Charles, is what you've been also a very, very consistent young man, and there's not too many people out here in our age group that's actually trying to get involved and make a difference, and I applaud you for that. So my question to you is, what is a project that you have led and organized and consistent that have delivered a life quality change to our city?
I don't have anything that I've done for the city, but when we talk about South Shore, when we talk about the ward, I've done a lot of things. So I was one of the lead writers for the Southeast Observer, which was a newspaper here in the community. I was on the committee that was for the South Shore 5K. Last year I actually ran our moderator's basketball program in 2015 when she ran for alderman. And I've done the One Summer Chicago program and other multiple programs here in the ward. So when we talk about what have I done for the city, I haven't done anything for the city. not large scale. But when we talk about the Southeast side, I've done a lot.
Thank you very much. If you have not taken a ticket and entered it into the bowl for the drawing to ask a question, please do so, because we're going to transition into that portion of the program. If you do have a question, we're going to call numbers. And again, we want to try to field as many of the questions that you all have. But once again, please make sure they are questions and not just general statements. Yes, Mr. Webb.
I don't want that, but is there a way we can have a second to kind of give our vision at least?
Absolutely. So what we will do, and that'll be a part of the closing portion of it, because we certainly want to, again, allow you all an opportunity to speak in totality as much as possible about your platforms. So without further ado, we're going to transition into the questions from the audience.
Thank you, Kiana. So before we do the questions from the audience, I just have a question myself, which is regarding economic development. So as we know, community revitalization is critical to any community, right? Especially in terms of stabilizing a community. And the city of Chicago has a program that allows homeowners, which is the Dollar Lot program, and I know there are some residents who are here that were recently denied their application for purchasing one of those lots. And so my question to you is, what checks and balances would you put in place, especially in terms of transparency, when it comes to those types of programs that will generate revenue into South Shore? And what I mean by checks and balances is a lot of people who applied for those dollar lots were denied by the Alderman. And those denials were in particular areas that are close to the lake, which means what? That development is coming, but those homeowners that live close to the lake that applied for those lots were denied, and those lots were held by the Alderman. So when I talk about checks and balances, it's very critical to be aware of big businesses that can come and pull you in, right? So what checks and balances would you put in place to maintain transparency so that when programs like that can revitalize the community members, the homeowners, have access? Because those community members and homeowners who could have purchased those lots would pay for taxes that pay for the schools in the community. So tell me, what checks and balances, transparency would you all put in place?
I just want to first say I'm glad Ebony's not in this race.
Yes, I almost was.
That's number one. And when we talk about the Dollar Lot program, and we talk about development, you know, if you look at the Third Ward, a lot of Third Ward lots are being held by the city and not sold solely because they know development was coming. So they knew development was coming. And so they held it, you know, Pat Dow, she wouldn't sell the lots. And then when they actually sold the lots, we had $500,000 condos and townhouses built on those same lots, which is the plan for South Shore as well. What we have to do is make sure that the people who are here, who are putting the sweat equity into our community, have the ability to buy those lots. And how do you make it more transparent? You make it more transparent by having a committee set up of community residents, ward residents, who knows when someone puts in an application for a lot. So everyone knows it's not in secret, because it has to go before City Hall. So it can't be in secret going before City Hall, but so that the entire ward knows, hey, someone put in an application for a dollar lot. They're home on here, they're vested here. We should sell them this lot.
So it's a disingenuous shame, and basically it is basically the wheelhouse of people trying to look like they've done something or they will do something, but they're actually trying to hold on for political favors and clout. That's the way Chicago has worked, and that's the way it's trying to continue to work. And so I'll use this opportunity to say this. There's major opportunity in our city right now. That's why I said everything that's going to be done in the ward, we need to own it, and we need to be organized enough to be the negotiators at the table. And so what I've done is I looked at that program and I realized that it is just disingenuous, but we also have some very big financial problems in our city. If we took all of the tips and took that money to try to fulfill our pension obligation, we would still be short $500 million. But there is an opportunity for us to stop being a city that taxes residents and actually start investing back in the community. So I'm presenting a Southside stimulus package where we can use a portion of the funds for TIF, as well as understanding that marijuana is about to be legalized. If they put those licenses in the same areas and allow the young people to grow in areas where they predominantly had the arrest, then we just created reparations for our community. And so with that, I'm looking to utilize the ability to bring in that wealth so that we don't even have to worry about talking about a dollar. We can actually afford to buy the land in our community, and we can get away from the political schemes of the city of Chicago by making sure that these people that are in our community have the capital to own, occupy, and to redevelop, because that's a lot of reason why they say that they're not going to give it to you, because you don't have the capital to redevelop. They knew we didn't have access to capital when they claimed to give us the lots for $1. So shame.
Shame. All right, thank you, Jedidiah and Kyle. It's good to see you. So we're going to go ahead and pull some tickets. Please make sure that you have your ticket, and please make sure that you have your question. I will bring the mic to you. We want to limit each question to a minute because we want to allow the candidates an opportunity to respond, and we'll go from there. So let me pull the first ticket. $872-021. All right.
Won the prize.
Good morning, and welcome everyone. Welcome our two candidates. Can you hear me now? Okay, great. So I just want to ask you a little information about what's going on regarding medical services. I want you to speak to the situation where we have a borderless community and regarding the current medical services. Now, when I say borderless, I say that because currently you have 3 hospitals that service primarily our community, 8th Ward, 10th Ward, and there's a variety of services that are provided, there's a variety of services that are not provided. So can you speak to what you know currently the services that are being provided, and then speak to what's missing and what you will do to help bridge that gap?
Great question.
I'll try to move as fast as I can. We'll start with
So we have hospital, I can't get it name. So Trinity. So we have Trinity, Jackson Park, South Shore Hospital. All 3 provide 3 different services. Now, when we talk about what do we need, we don't have a trauma center, and particularly the 4th District. When we talk about the southeast portion of the ward, we have a lot of violence. But we do have a trauma center at U Chicago. Just in terms of the service they provide, I'm not really sure of the services they provide. But what I will say is, we need more state funding for our hospitals, particularly South Shore Hospital. I know that they were at the end of their funding, and they're about to go through their emergency safety net. So when we talk about just hospital services, I do know that South Shore Hospital needs more funding, and that's a state level issue.
Definitely a state level issue. I again work to advocate to get a Southside Trauma Center, which is at the university. As well, I was invited into conversations with Dr. Carol Adams about designing it. And so I'm very proud of that as an accomplishment that we have, because we now have a Southside Trauma Center. As far as the 3 hospitals here, I'm just a very frank and upfront guy. If my leg got cut off in an accident, I would basically walk to the university because I don't feel secure with the hospitals that we currently have. And so what I'm going to say is that as far as services, to answer your question, I don't know that either. But I do know that there is a safety issue, and it's been tested by us. We were just at what's the hospital in South? We were just at the hospital. South Shore. We were just at South Shore Hospital, and we were able to walk in, go upstairs, and roam around the halls, and we weren't even checked by security. So we've done safety assessments on the hospitals to know that they need to become safer, as well as they need better methods for fast-tracking patients, because sometimes you're going there and you're kind of be waiting at length, or when you go back there, there's some sanitary needs. So as an alderman, the only thing that I've been able to ascertain for that is that we need to advocate for better safety measures, we need to advocate for more efficiency, and we need to advocate for more sanity, sanitary means in the hospital, but outside of that, I really can't speak to it, I'm sorry.
Last number's 33, 872033.
Say something. Come on.
You don't have a question. You don't have a question.
If you win, you gonna get on. If y'all win, you gonna get on board with Ford? No.
All right, next.
What do you guys plan to do to engage young people in the process of, the STEM manufacturing is a big thing now. Using technology to engage young people, bringing technology.
Engaging the young people, bringing STEM and technology.
Well, I actually believe that, well, first of all, I would like to say that most of the workers in my campaign, I've been identifying young people in the community to actually work the campaign. So I've been building relationships with them, as well as I've been doing gang intervention throughout the course of my advocacy as well. And so I know a lot of the guys that surround the neighborhood, and there is a need for trade development. There's a need for, a lot of guys don't even have IDs or even know how to read. Literacy is a need. And so I plan on through having a relationship and being, people keep saying that Alderman is a part-time job, but we got full-time problems. So I can't understand that. But I believe that we need to get out there and engage the young people. And what I would love to do is to create a year-round manufacturer training facility. There's a tent that you can put up that gives you the opportunity to train year-round young people to have the trades and skills, as well as fight for our education to have the STEM and the trades and the civics back in our school. But that is going to come with a plan that it's going to be on our website within 48 hours, and how we plan on making the 7th Ward the most skilled labor force in Chicago. Because with the blight we have here, no matter where they're hiring in Chicago, we want them to look in the 7th Ward for opportunity, and we want them to definitely check out the young people who live here now.
So my degree is in biological sciences. So when we talk about just how do we get people involved in the STEM sciences, it's really just access and opportunity. So it's a program called Calumet is My Backyard that solely deals with 60649 and 60617, so Southeast side. But the issue is no one knows about it. No one knows about Calumet is My Backyard. It's a great program that we have, which is solely for the Southeast side. But it's not publicized, so we need to make sure we're publicizing our programs that we have, and we need to make sure we're increasing funding for those programs. In regards to technology, my son's 9 years old. He can fix an iPhone screen.
That's what's up.
I work at Hyde Park High School. They shot a video, edited a video during lunch, and it went viral by the end of the day. So these kids don't have an issue with technology. It's us honing those skills, making sure we're giving them the resources they need to go to school, to get the degree, to make sure that they have a job available for the skill set that they have, and that's how you bring them in. You edit videos on your phone? Well, come on, let's show you how to really edit a video. You fix the iPhone screens, well, let's see if we can get you a job working at Spring, in a repair center. We have to make sure that we're looking at the skill set that they have and giving them the access and ability to be successful. And we do both by publicizing the programs we have and more and increasing the funding.
Last two numbers, 17. 17. Glad I'm on my gloves today.
Kind of piggyback on what you were just saying about how do we get these programs out? Because I believe that there are a lot of programs in this area and people just don't know about it. Like I look at you have to scroll through the current alderman, you have to scroll through his email to kind of look through all the flyers that pertain to the neighborhood. So what are, what are you all planning to do to make sure that there's more technology so that we actually know what's going on? Like, how are you going to advocate for improving our information and technology infrastructure? Because in the city, our city website is shameful. And I mean, obviously as alderman, you don't control that, but you can advocate for more technology and more access because you should be able to do more in this city without having to call 311.
So basically a more technology savvy infrastructure so that residents can access information.
Okay, so the first thing I want to say is the city website is hard to navigate on purpose. That's purpose. Just so everyone knows. And the second thing is just making sure, and this is actually a reverse on what you just said. So we want to make sure we're sending out email blasts, but I get like 1,000 emails a day. So if we're sending out an email blast, we want to make sure it's short and descriptive. And not only that, we want to make sure that we're working with our community organizations to get the word out. And door knocking. You know, door knocking, neighbor-to-neighbor initiatives, that's what's really important. So making sure we're using the technology smart, but also making sure that our neighbor-to-neighbor initiatives, that our door knocking, that our community organizations are helping to spread the message of things that they want. Like, I'll give you guys a perfect example. Who's ever heard of Christmas in the Wards? Exactly. Now, so Christmas in the so look on you, blow diggity. So Christmas in the Wards is a program where aldermen come in and they donate gifts to different communities. I mean, different neighbors, different families in the ward, but no one knows about it because it's not publicized. Because it's not publicized. But what we're going to do is make sure that it's publicized, make sure that it's marketed, make sure that everyone knows that Christmas in the Wards is coming up.
Do the aldermen know about it?
Yeah, they know.
Yeah, okay.
And so it's just, that's gonna be the echo, and I'm just more of a straight shooter. Everything in Chicago is designed for our elected officials to be gatekeepers that stop us from getting the opportunities that if you're not going to do their political will. That's how it's all designed, and we know that. So, again, with community engagement, and you said technology, I connect with my national organizations through technology. It's very important. Yes, it should be simplified. But in our community, I'm gonna say that one of the biggest heartbreaks that I've had since I've been canvassing our neighborhood is that it seems that there's animosity from the north end to the south end of the ward, from the older to the younger people. And so I believe that we now have to incentivize community gatherings and create an interface through technology where people want to go to it to learn about who each other is, and we need to bring in experts to train the elderly community that are not necessarily savvy with technology how to utilize it. But for us, technology is not going to be not priority right now. We got to get the people in the 7th Ward to talk to each other and to organize together so that we can actually become the community we should be.
Amen.
Last two numbers, 3-1.
Without conditions. What I wanted to basically put in the atmosphere is that I know that we're supposed to be asking questions. Just give me 1 minute half of a second to say this. We really, really need to hear the echo and the heartbeat of the candidates that's sitting before us, because I've heard some really, really nice things, and I heard some really, really important things that we should focus on, because we need change. We need change, and we really need to dig deep, and we really need to really analyze the things that's before us, because the heartbeat, let me give the question. When you're running for an office, it's supposed to be people-driven, meaning you've got to have that heart. As candidates that's sitting here before us today, Can you say that you really do have the heart for the people? That you will consider your job is for the people and not for selfish gain?
Great question. Great question.
What's the question?
Okay, so I'm a member of Alpha Fraternity Incorporated. So it's leaders of all, servants of all, we shall transcend all. So what is it? So basically what I'm saying is, I'm a servant leader. I've been a servant leader all my life. I've dedicated my life to service of people, and I'll continue to do so.
I've been fighting on the front lines of advocacy for 17 years, in Chicago specifically for 10. And I've had every reason to leave this city. But the premise of my campaign is fighting to give people a reason to stay. No paycheck, no staff, no budget, and I'm more criticized than I'm celebrated. A lot of people would rather be comfortable than confrontation into systems that are oppressing them. Labeled, when I've taken oaths of poverty and everything else, I march no matter what the condition of the weather is. And I ran for Alderman before. I lost. I didn't stop fighting for the city. But beyond that, I had a very public moment when I lost my child. Nobody can take it away from me that was my child. That woman that asked the question.
Excuse me, boss. You have a text message.
There's even been lies that have been put on me with my child. And I had a public moment where I wanted to take my own life in a very tough city. I never broke in 10 years fighting for Chicago. But when I lost my child, I finally broke. But when I broke, the city that I fought hard for ridiculed me, and they abandoned me, and I got my healing, and guess what I did? I got right back up, and I got right back to fighting, and I got right on the national stage. And I'm a respected leader across this country for that. And I access every level of government now, and day one, I'm not just dependent on City Hall. I've already found 4 businesses to come to our community, and they got one expectation. You got to give those licenses to people who live here, from 7-Eleven to CD1 Price, to Old White's Ice Cream. If the community wants it, you got to give those licenses for franchises to people who live here in the community. And all of this in my entire life has been for the people of the city of Chicago. Because, I'll say this, when you get done advocating for everybody else, you still got to figure out how to survive. So I spend most of my day fighting for everybody else, and then I still got to figure out how to pay my own bills. And that has not been an easy task. My heart is completely for the city of Chicago.
Amen.
I want to segue just a bit into the question that was asked, and this is regarding money. We all know if it doesn't make money, what? It doesn't make sense, right? And that's usually how things happen, especially in politics. And one thing that I've seen from many politicians is that you can go into it with the heart for the people, but can you maintain the heart for the people? And I think for me, as a homeowner, as a landlord in South Shore, that's a very critical question, and I'm glad she asked that. Do you have the heart? But I want to know, how are you going to maintain it? What are you going to do when it's time to bring money to South Shore, and it won't pass appropriations. It won't come out of committee. You're denied by whoever is elected as mayor. That's very, very critical, because a lot of people, as I mentioned, go into it with the heart for the people, but they can't maintain the heart, and there are side deals that are made, there are things that are said and done, and what happens is you lose yourself and you lose the heart of the people. So what are you going to do? Because I don't want to see that happen in South Shore. I don't want to see my newly elected alderman sell out for South Shore.
So I just want to say I'm on the record, no money from developers, just on the record when we talk about who's donating to me. Also, I'm going to be honest, I don't have a moment of transparency. So everyone talks about how the current alderman votes 100% with the mayor. It's not 100% with the mayor. It might be like 98%. But the purpose of voting with the mayor is to bring resources back to your community. That's the thought process behind that. what has happened in the 7th Ward is we've had an alderman who has voted with the mayor but hasn't brought the resources back to our community.
Right.
And that's the real issue. He hasn't leveraged his vote. So what I would do is, if I'm in city council, I'm going to make sure I'm leveraging my vote. We only need 26 votes to get something through. It's 17 black wards. We only need 26 votes to get something through in the 17 black wards. So I'm going to work with my colleagues, both black, white, and Latino, to make sure I'm voting smart, to make sure that I'm getting my bills out of the community, to make sure when I get something on the city council floor, that I'm getting the votes that I need to bring back resources for the ward. Thank you.
Again, first of all, because of the population decline, the particular wards are about 50 to 55,000 residents. We've lost 200,000 people in our community, predominantly black. In other words, coming next remapping, we might have less black wards in Chicago and less representation. The problem with our politicians across the board, as I've had to deal with every single one of them, is that they're too afraid to stand up for their communities and their constituents. The reason there are 3 types of power that Chicago responds to. You're either going to have the money, you're going to have the name, or you're going to have the people. I plan on, and what you're saying is selling out is actually means independence. I'm only one vote in a larger scheme of things, and the only way that you can move Chicago is if Chicagoans are paying attention to what downtown is doing. And so I'm committed to making sure that you all are aware of what downtown is doing. And it doesn't matter if they want to close a school, if we want to deal with police brutality, it doesn't matter what sister agency is going on. I'm going to have 2 buses to make sure that out of 53,000 people, 2 bus loads and 7 warders are at every single meeting that downtown has. And this is why. Because when you are able to make Chicago aware of what downtown is doing, you don't have to become holding to a mayor when the citizens are going to say that this is not what we want or this is what we want. And you have to have the ability to organize, educate, challenge, and resource the people to fight for what they deserve and what they want in the community. All the knowledge in the world is ineffective if you cannot get people to come together and actually work to getting the goal done. You keep your independence by, once again, if I'm the alderman, I'm going to city council with 53,000 voices, not just one. They go in city council, they get their orders. We're going to city council to give them our agenda.
Woo. Thank you, candidates. There is a vehicle with the license plates Ask Lee that is blocking. Another vehicle, Ask Lee, is blocking. Okay, thank you. All right, this is good, y'all. Are you all enjoying yourselves? Yeah. All right, I hope you got these questions ready because we need to ask the questions. Last 2 numbers, 32. 32. Last 2 numbers, 29. 29. Oh, you know what? When you come back, I'll after they ask this one. Go ahead. You can move your car. Oh, he wants you at, okay. Oh, they don't want you to move now?
Praise the Lord, everyone.
Praise the Lord.
I'm so happy to be here and to listen to these 2 young men give their heart as to what they're going to hopefully do for our community. But the biggest thing that I think of right now, because many points have already been addressed, how are you going to approach the fact that we have no grocery store?
Thank you for that question. People have been waiting on it.
Yeah.
Okay, so I was on a grocery store campaign with Valkyrie and the Planning Coalition, just for full disclosure. But what we learned during that process was that when stores look at a community, they look at the viability. So they look at the viability and the feasibility of,
I hate that mic. I'm sorry. Can you just try to speak up real loud?
Yeah.
Just like
bottom of it. Don't hold the top of it. Hold the bottom.
Okay.
So they do a viability study and a feasibility study.
Yes.
And so when they do those studies, they decide whether or not they're going to open up a store in that community. Now, when we talk about these TIPS dollars and these subsidies, These are the businesses that need those tip dollars. These are the businesses that need those subsidies. Boeing doesn't need a subsidy. Aon Corporation doesn't need a subsidy. You know, Amazon didn't need a subsidy. We need to make sure we're giving tax subsidies and business incentives to make grocers come to our community. And also, I just want to say that the grocery store is in the fifth ward. Thank you.
So we have a,
Can you say that again?
The actual grocery store, it sits in the fifth ward. It doesn't sit in the seventh ward. So we have,
You talking about Dominic's?
Yeah, Dominic's. Because I think that's where the woman was going with the question. The Dominic site sits in the fifth ward, not the seventh ward.
Is it stabilized on 83rd?
I'm approaching the grocery store just as everything else. I also worked with a commission to try to get grocery stores on the southeast side of Chicago. But there is this notion that we have to keep begging people to bring us what we already have in the community. And so my approach to the grocery store issue is, and I don't know how far down the line we are today, but we need quality food choice options now because people got to eat, and we need to make sure that those places look like us. There's a grocery store in this community, or a little small convenience store in this community, where they actually sell illegal guns and drugs to the young people and house their gang activity right on 7th and 5th. And so, and the operator does not look like us. My approach to this is to replace that with somebody from our community. And so I've been identifying people while I've canvassed that want to actually be business owners so that we can actually fill all the vacancies in our business district with people here by getting them access to capital and making sure that they're trained to run a business effectively. The grocery store, we can work a cooperative grocery store model where the community can come together, raise our own funds and resources, advocate, and we can actually identify the vendors who bring us quality food to our neighborhood, and the 7th Ward can own its own grocery store. It may not be Mariano's, it may not be Dominic's, but I would love to see something that says 7th Ward Residence Grocery Store, or however we name it. My first task is to organize a cooperative so that we can build our own grocery store. Who knows, maybe we can start putting chains around the country.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure because they gave me some clarifying information, but she's good. Okay, all right, thank you for that. Last two numbers, 20. 20. $42. Now I know I ain't seen that many people walk up out of here.
They don't have a question.
You don't have a question? Well, I have. And I kept thinking it's somebody that came in a little later. Okay.
Thank you so much. I wanted to pose this question because
For the room, for the people in the back.
I'm so sorry. I apologize. Want to pose this question to candidates regarding these schools that have been closed in our communities. Do you have any thoughts in terms of repurposing those buildings? Our children need centers where they can come and acquire after-school tutorial programming, things like that. Some schools do, in fact, provide those after-school programs, but have we thought about repurposing some of these buildings that we have, some of these school buildings, per se, that are in our community? And what's your thoughts about that?
So all school buildings should be repurposed. When they're not repurposed and they're left shuttered and vacant, they actually bring down our property values, which, as I said, are already in the cellar. When we talk about the repurposing, Price School, which is in the 4th Ward on, I want to say like 41st and Drexel, it got repurposed as a church and a community center. And I believe we have organizations here in South Shore that can do the same thing. What they need is the resource, the access to capital. They need help from the alderman to make sure that their paperwork is okay. So when they actually put in a bid for a property, everything is in line. Thank you.
I've already identified some funding sources that I've already identified some funding sources that we're gonna be obtaining, when I become the Alderman of the ward, should I become the Alderman of the ward, to make, I would like for the schools to be repurposed, because we're still paying utility bills for them, even though they're not being utilized. But there is an idea to create a town square. You know, that's like an old thing where the community would come and gather. And so we want to create a town square in the community in these vacant school buildings that will also house a place where we can actually give refuge to some of the homeless, have like an arcade for our young people, and have a lot of people have pop-up shop ideas. We can actually turn these buildings into epicenters of community building. And so that is what I'm looking to do with the vacant school buildings in our ward. And the way I want to do it is those amazing organizations that are here, that are rooted here, like coming together, creating a collaborative, and giving them the access to the capital, and working with building and planning to give them the lot. Maybe they can get that for $1, and then we can turn that into an epicenter for those buildings into an epicenter for our community. And we've already identified the funding source.
So I just have one quick question. Since I want to pull another number, but everybody's been quiet. Does somebody have a question? And I got so many numbers. I don't know. Okay. Okay. So we'll do this, so I don't keep pulling numbers and nobody asks questions. We want to make sure that your questions get answered. But I have just a question regarding the grocery store conversation, or store conversation that we had. Charles had mentioned about the feasibility study, and when businesses come, they want to make sure that there's viability. And South Shore has a very high rate of Section 8. The highest, I would say, in the city, right? So when we talk about feasibility, viability, and stores coming to say, am I going to make money? South Shore has a very high transient rate of people coming in and out, because of those different elements that we have here in South Shore. So when you think about ordinances and businesses coming in, what other things are you going to do to make sure that we are viable and feasible, so that we are attractive in terms of branding? There's a lot of stigmatization attached to South Shore, where businesses will say, I'm not coming here because I'm not going to make money here, because they're killing people here. So what are you going to do to change that, to make sure that we are or appear viable, so that businesses can thrive? Because it's very easy to say, yes, the community can pull together, but when you look at the community as a whole, in terms of dollars, are we viable? And then if you all could line up here, and we can, if you feel like it. If you don't feel like standing, I'll come. I'm sorry, Jedidiah. If you don't feel like standing, I can come to you. But I just want to make sure that we get your questions answered. Thank you so much. Go ahead.
Ooh, that's a loaded question. I believe that there has to be a well-transferred and a quality of life change for our people. And that's what I'm focused on, making sure that we're able to deliver. And, okay. That's what I'm looking for, looking to us to be able to deliver. Transient does not always equate to irresponsible. There was a point when I needed government assistance to thrive. So with the transient community, again, within the Southside stimulus package, we're hoping to identify even more resources to create homeowners, as well as to create entrepreneurs. I am very, very, very convinced that those are excuses, because businesses only care about profit. There is an active plan of gentrification. And so, in order for us to get businesses to come in, we have to have our community organized, and we have to have an identity that goes beyond what part of the community you live in. I'm the Jeffrey Manor people. I'm the South Shore people. When we become the 7th Ward people, and we begin to fill up these vacant business spaces with people who are in the community that own them, people will run to the 7th Ward versus us having to fight to try to beg somebody to come to the 7th Ward. And I have seen completely desolate areas develop whole structures, brick and mortar, when they have a mayor who sends them the resources so that they can build. And I'm going to be a loud, unapologetic voice to whoever the mayor is to make sure they recognize that there must be equity in every budget, in every ordinance. There's $100 million right now in city government that is unmarked called the Candidates Fund that was identified by the treasurer. The reason why that money did not come to the neighborhood as they promised it to come is because they've written the ordinance to lock it in. It should be a sense of urgency from City Hall to get us that kind of funds, and they basically require them to show a private investment.
Don't forget about Chicago.
So when we talk about feasibility and viability, I just want to first say that the transient population and the Section 8 voucher holders, that they aren't the issue. You know, so while that might be the stigma, they aren't the issue. The real issue is that we haven't correlated feasibility with buying power. So just because the median income for 60649 says one thing, it doesn't equate to our buying power. So what we have to do is when we're in these meetings with these grocers and these businesses, we have to say, hey, okay, well, I know our median income is $42,000, but when we talk about what we're spending in terms of economy and commerce, we might match Lakeview, or we might match Lincoln Park, because we do. And so I think that has to be the conversation that we have with businesses. And also, it's not just about making us look viable, it's about making sure that our corridors are clean. I'll never forget this, when we actually did the grocery store campaign, they said Bob Mariano came to 71st and Jeffrey at like 11 o'clock at night. So he came at 11 o'clock at night, and he saw what you see on 71st and Jeffrey at 11 o'clock at night, and that was a turnoff. And so how do we do that? How do we get business coming? Making sure our business corridors are clear loitering, making sure that the loose boy men and the weed men and everybody, whatever they selling, man, you know, is held accountable, and that we're making sure we're doing our due diligence to keep our corridors clean.
Thank you so much. All right, so each person here has 1 minute to ask a question. Each candidate has 1 minute to respond. We want to hurry up and get you out of here.
All right, so I've heard a lot of great things here in terms of participatory budgeting, zoning advisory councils. I want to bring it down from a 30,000 square foot to, or 30,000 foot view, to really think about the tactical co-governance. So what is sort of that 100-day plan to actually transition towards co-governance? That means devolving power from the aldermanic office back to both community organizations and residents. So thinking about how you're forming those committees within that first 100 days.
So within the first 100 days, what I'll do is identify nonpartisan organizations that are in the ward that have been working towards the quality of life plan for the ward and empowering them so that when we sit at the table as equal. So I'm not just the alderman sitting with constituents, but I'm the alderman sitting with people who are equally as vested in the community as I am. And when you do that, when they go back to the people of their organization, they go back to their block club, they can say, hey, we sit at the table and we came to a decision together. I think that's one of the first steps we should make in terms of running a more transparent, constituent-based office.
Okay, 1 minute. We're going to have a follow-up election, and it's going to be in our community where anybody that is a resident that would like to step up to be a precinct captain, they will be able to do so, and we will, within their precinct, identify those 46 individuals. Also, the second thing that I'm planning on doing is everybody who ran for alderman in the community, I would like to make sure that they're the office staff that we're going to be working with, so that they have an opportunity to work in the community. The benefit of that is we all have our own supportive basis. It's going to bring us closer together. And then when this elected 46 precinct captain system is put in place, that's going to be independent, that's going to be my accountability. I also will not run for committeeman because there needs to be a check of power as well. And we need to make sure that they are then rolling directly out the participatory budget program, and how they're going to make sure they disseminate information within their precinct and they vote on the projects that need to be done. In other words, I'm completely committed to making sure that the residents run and govern the 7th Ward office.
How you vote in city council matters. So one of the big debates that I see online is conversation about the Lincoln Yards project in Lincoln Park, how that is going to be using TIP funds, whether it's good for the city. If you were in city council today, my question is, would you vote yes or no to either approve or deny that project, and how does your vote impact South Shore?
So, you know, they have automatic prerogative, automatic privilege. So I mean, whatever I want to do for my ward, I'm going to do for my ward, and the rest of the city council is supposed to vote to push it through. This goes back to what I said about leveraging my vote. So if I need to get something out of committee, I'm going to talk to the 2nd Ward Alderman and say, hey, what's up? You know, like I'm trying to get something out of committee. If you want me to vote for this project for your ward, you have to help me. And even still, I still might not vote for it just because of the impact that Lincoln Yards is going to have on the city as a whole, particularly the Lincoln Park community and the communities to the south, Ukrainian village.
I don't want to sound redundant, but I also want to go on record to say that I've already experienced that. We fought to get the municipal dispensary ordinance out of committee, which required banks to tell the city of Chicago what they were doing with taxpayer funds that were sitting in their institutions. And I had to fight Ed Burke to do so. And in that, I learned that when you have aldermen that are beholden to a mayor, they are not going to negotiate with you to go against the will of the mayor. In order to do so, again, it's a very simple and redundant answer. You have to organize your community, and they have to speak about the disparities and the inequity that is in the system of Chicago, so that the larger city, the residents, will begin to echo that how can we develop a $1 billion project on the north side when we have historically continued to disinvest on the south side. We have been a great neighbor in Chicago from this side of Chicago, making sure every other neighborhood has been developed. It is time that the city of Chicago make the south and the west side of the city a priority, and we need a champion to be loud and unapologetic about that.
Thank you so much. Good evening, everybody. The most growing concern for parents is their children being abducted, kidnapped, running away from home. So as a 7th Ward Alderman, what is your plan or agenda to protect at-risk young people and young women who are being abducted, or how do you plan to prevent it while you're in office?
So, just around the children, pushing more money towards the, what are they called? The safety walk. Safe zone. Yeah, so the safe zone. So when we talk, I can't even think of it, but so when we talk about safe passage, yes, there we go. So increase the number of people we have in the safe passage program, and by doing that, not only do we improve safety, but we employ people from the community, because most of the time when people from the community, the people who do the safe passage, they're from the community, and so we're employing community members, and we're also making sure that our children are safe.
I'm not sure if I want to increase the number of safe passage workers, but I definitely want to increase their pay, because a lot of, even during the polar vortex, there were some safe passage workers who had no heat and they had no resource to even make sure they were safe when they were making sure the rest of our children were safe. I've also been very active with the BHA campaign in going and finding missing children in the city of Chicago. And it goes to one simple fundamental value. We've got to get back to the days when everybody's children were our children, and we have programs and activities that keep them active so they're not wandering around in the city where predators are being unchecked because we don't have enough detectives to solve the crimes and find out who is out here abducting our children and creating the violence and the havoc. But on top of that, the community safety program, where we're going to fund residents to do safety patrols in our community, to get to know the children in partnership with the Chicago Police Department, will also enhance our ability to keep our children safe. And there needs to be legislation drafted, I will do it from my office, that will make sure that we tell when children are missing immediately and not the Amber Alert wait period that we have.
Good afternoon, everyone. Stephanie. The current alderman said he brought $100 million to the ward.
Come on now.
I need to know what are you all's feelings on that?
Okay.
Because I don't see it. Yeah, he said it's for infrastructure.
Okay, so the $100 million that the alderman said he brought to the ward, it was brought to the ward, but it wasn't brought to the ward by his office.
Right.
It was capital infrastructure programs that Mayor Rahm Emanuel already had in place.
Right.
And so those things are going to happen regardless. They were always going to happen. He might have had some influence on it, but to say that he bought $100 million to the ward is just not true. It's a misstatement.
He would be running for president of the United States of America because he only get $5.2 million, and if he raised $100 million, he needs to be the mayor. And it's really simple. The lead that was in the water pipes is contaminating our homes. The mayor committed to fixing the pipes. I think it's somewhere to the tune of $93 million came to our community specifically, and he is taking credit for it, just like he's taking credit for Christmas in the war. Just like he's not here for the forum saying that he didn't get an invitation. He should have sent a representative to the Park Advisory Council. He should have been here speaking about his plan for the next 4 years. I am very, very disheartened about the misrepresentations of what has been accomplished in our ward, because let's be honest, in 4 years, you'll be talking about more than lights and paved streets and garbage cans. Any alderman would do that. There has been nothing done to address the quality of life concerns in this community, including finding $100 million. According to the Tribune, he has brought in nearly almost into his credit, almost $1 million. And that $1 million, I can't finish there. Because my time is up.
Not to mention talking about dogs. I don't know.
God.
Hello. There is a disenfranchised group that makes up a big part of South Shore, and I'm talking about the renters. And so basically, for the past 5-6 years, there's been big development companies coming in and putting evictions on these renters. Their RTLOs, residential tenant landlord ordinances, have not been upheld, and most of those evictions are coming from those RTLOs not being upheld. These buildings that they live in are below par. And once you get eviction on your background, that's equivalent to having a felony. And so then it's hard for them to move. So I've been placing these people, and I've placed a lot of these people right here in South Shore. I don't see them represented here, but they make up a big part of South Shore. So what are we going to do about that? About those residential tenant landlord ordinances, about those big companies that's coming here and putting these evictions on these people's names and making them unrentable. Because the renters, that makes up the bigger portion.
Pangea.
Thank you. That's all
Shots fired. That is a very complex question, but I'm gonna say this again. I have identified 7 lawyers who live in the 7th ward, and I basically talked to them about creating a deal where it's going from housing to criminal matters. That basically, if we can create a coalition of lawyers who live in the community, we want to make sure that we're providing lawyers for our community, from our community, and we're identifying funding sources to help pay for that. But this has become the place where you go to get an eviction. And I think in order for that, it's time for us to start holding these foreign landlords accountable, as well as to make sure that we put rent control in place. I do believe that that's necessary right now, because we got to raise the living wage for the people who live in our community. Rent control, and I'm actually trying to identify every single owner of every property, foreign or domestic, so that we can hold them accountable to how they're treating our constituents in rent.
So the real issue is that when we talk about South Shore, when we talk about the marginalization of renters and Section 8 voucher holders or subsidy holders, is homeowners versus renters. And the homeowners feel like the renters aren't as vested in the community. And that's a misnomer. We have to get away from that. We have to get to the space where everyone is represented and everyone knows that they're represented, and they know that their opinions matter. Because at the end of the day, they live here too. They vote just like we do. They go to the same schools we do. You know, their children go to the South Shore Library just like our children do. So we need to make sure that not only are we including them in the government process, but that they feel welcomed and included.
Right. So I just want to
clarify her question, because as I'm listening to the responses, I'm not getting the right answer. And then this is, I'm sorry, the last, I've been told I gotta wrap it up. But I looked and I'm like, you're not answering the question right. The question is about ordinances. So when you look at, and this is a conversation that I had with the alderman, because I was concerned, what are you doing about the ordinances? You have a multitude of renters. If you go down South Shore Drive, huge multi-unit buildings with absentee landlords, right? They don't live here. And so the ordinances, how are you going to change the ordinance? Because the way the ordinance is set up now, and Val's telling me I got to hurry up. The way the ordinance is set now is that it allows companies like Pangea to evict. In 2017, the Chicago Reader had indicated that South Shore was considered the eviction capital for organizations like Pangea. And they were the ones that were evicting. We just had a gentleman on the news, Pangea, not turning up the heat, but he might get evicted. Anyway, ordinances, not what you all were answering.
Thank you.
So we would have to just make sure we're following the ordinances to the letter of the law, make sure that tenants who live in these buildings know the tenant ordinances, and making sure that my office is making sure we're doing everything that we need to do to make sure that they are informed and do know their rights.
But on top of that, I'm looking for people like yourself, because there comes a time when every elected official have to be honest that they can't do it all themselves. We may not be able to master everything, and I would like to talk to you about that to get a greater understanding of your expectation. But for me, I'm open for drafting legislation, but more than anything, I'm open for getting people the quality of life shift that they need to become owners, to become the ones who own these buildings, and to have the capital to pay their rent, and still eat, and still be able to invest in things that they care about in their hobbies. I'm looking to improve the quality of life, but I'm also open to rewriting ordinances and working to get it passed.
Okay, Val just told me that it's time. Please don't kill the messenger. I'm just following my orders. So Val, Kiana, who am I turning it over to? You said it's rap.
They have to give their out of fairness, can you just let them two answer the
Val, there's a question on the floor.
Okay, this is regarding the school and the LSC. And I know that, we want to protect the children in the community. But again, if you want to have better schools, you need to have active LSC. There needs to be a way for the school system to get parents in this particular community where we have the type of parents that we have. We need to have a different law that covers the background check. We lost our whole LSC because of the background check. So somebody needs to take a look at how the background check is done for the LSC.
So just to make sure I'm getting this question right, you're saying that we should have less stringent laws for the LSC, or more stringent laws?
Less for the parents, because the parents have the children in school and they're not taking their children away. But at the same time, when the background check is done, they can pass the background check to be on the LSC.
So to answer, I don't want less laws. I'm gonna just say that on the record right now. We don't need less stringent laws. We have to keep our children safe. But what we do need to do is make sure that we have an LSC with resources. So if you actually go to my website, what I say is I want a full functioning LSC with money allocated to improve community and parent engagement with the LSC. So a lot of times you have an LSC election and you're gonna have 7 people in an LSC and there's gonna be 7 people who voted, the 7 people who ran. So we need to make sure that we have money allocated for that process.
And I would say that my fight is to expand the powers of the LSC and to highlight it more so that more parents will more parents will actually run for LSC. I'm also think of the same mindset that I think that we need more. The laws are not, I don't think that we need, the ceiling is fine, but we need to attract a broader base and find other ways to make sure that those parents who cannot pass that background check are still involved and they have the voice that they need at the table.
So thank you, gentlemen, so much. Thank you to our attendees for being here today. Thank you to Pastor Anque and the church for opening their doors. We're going to afford each of you 30 seconds to give your closing statement. I'd encourage you to include your website address, any other means that voters can follow back up with you and stay apprised of your campaign. The last gentleman had a question about community policing. If you could just infuse your position on that into your closing statement, that would be great. Thank you so much.
My website is Charles Kyle for Alderman. My Facebook is my name, Charles Kyle, both my Facebook political page and my regular Facebook. In terms of community policing, Charles Kyle for Alderman, K-Y-L-E. In terms of community policing, we need more funding for community policing. The community polices itself. When you look at Mount Greenwood, when you look at some of these other communities, when you look at Bridgeport, they police themselves. So they are the first line of defense versus crime. And we need the same thing.
Auxiliary police officers, I served in 8 years and I did it also in Trumbull Park. I believe that community and auxiliary police officers is the way to go for some of my safety concerns. My website, things are on the literature that's being passed out in the room. If you don't mind grabbing it, our website is getting ready to be refreshed, so you're going to see it go up differently in 2 days. But this is my issue here. I believe that this is either our greatest stance or our last chance to make sure that we're seated at the table and not on the menu for what Chicago's direction is headed in. And I want to be an alderman that's champion fighting and delivering resources again without excuse.
Thank you again, gentlemen, so much. Remember these two voices that you heard from today. South Shore Votes, remember to hashtag that. Thank you to the Neighborhood Network Alliance and Dems on the Move who hosted today. There are 2 other forums that are also going to be taking place in the 5th and the 8th Ward, because again, this is all South Shore. Stay warm, God bless, and register, vote.